Welcome back to Explain America. This is your host, Kyle Becker. Well, we have sanctuary cities going absolutely rogue. There have been rebellions in these cities where the Democrat governors and mayors are supporting anti-ICE protesters. And in one city, Portland, well, they just got a wake-up call because Trump is sending in troops from California and in Texas. These are National Guard troops that he is federalizing. But it appears that these rogue judges, they don't like this too much, and they're trying to block him. But there's some bad news for them. There is the law and history on the President of the United States side, and we'll explain this shortly. But before we do, please like, share, and comment at Explain America. Join us. We appreciate your support for common sense journalism. Now, we've been reporting how the Trump administration is federalizing troops. They're recruiting them from states that are friendly, such as Texas, to send them to places like Portland, Oregon, and Chicago, Illinois, in order to rein in these sanctuary cities whose criminal aliens pose a threat to American citizens. Well, Governor Gavin Newsom sued Donald Trump for federalizing California's National Guard troops to send to Portland, and a rogue judge, of course, sympathetic to the Golden Boy governor, well, it looks like they're intervening. We have a federal judge blocking President Trump's efforts to deploy National Guard troops into Portland. That was a late night decision on Sunday. It's U.S. District Judge Karen Immergut ruled the action was unlawful and unconstitutional, issuing an emergency temporary restraining order to halt the deployment of California's National Guard.
Brian Ainsley and Lawrence, good morning, friends. Today, the White House will have to come up with a new plan to address what it's calling a crime crisis in Portland, Oregon. As you mentioned, a federal judge over the weekend, who was appointed by President Trump, blocked the president's efforts to deploy National Guard troops. These troops would come from Oregon, as well as other states, including Texas and California. Now, this is a temporary ruling, but no doubt a setback for the White House and its efforts to address what it says is an outrageous, unlawful, and dangerous situation.
Portland is burning to the ground. You have agitators, insurrectionists. The governor, the mayor, the politicians are petrified for their lives. And you have a judge like that, that judge ought to be a king of them.
We are hearing from White House senior aides, including Stephen Miller, who said there is no legal distinction between a state volunteering guardsmen to guard the border and volunteering guardsmen to guard a federal immigration facility. Either we have a federal government supremacy clause in a nation, or we don't. We're also hearing from California Governor Gavin Newsom, the Democrat, writing, "The court granted our request for a temporary restraining order halting any federalization, relocation, or deployment of any Guard members to Oregon from any state. Trump's abuse of power won't stand." Well, a governor who was in favor of this plan is Texas Governor Greg Abbott, who said he authorized the president to call up to 400 members of the Texas National Guard to ensure safety for federal officials. Either you fully enforce protection for federal employees or get out of the way and let the Texas Guard do it.
So the order also bars the use of troops from any other state in Washington, D.C. or in Oregon. Immergut's ruling says that the Trump administration's action violates federal statute 10 U.S.C. 12406 and the 10th Amendment. Well, it looks like a rogue judge finally remembered the 10th Amendment exists. So the Justice Department has made indications that it will be appealing this ruling with arguments that the president retains authority under federal law to deploy National Guard forces in cases of domestic unrest. And I'll just give you one example of this happening in the past. The Whiskey Rebellion, 1791 to 1794. Primarily in western Pennsylvania, that arose in response to a federal excise tax on whiskey, which the farmers viewed as unfair, and that led to armed resistance against tax collectors and ultimately a military response from the government. That was under President George Washington. And then we have Freeze's Rebellion, also in Pennsylvania, 1799 to 1800. And of course, the civil rights movements, enforcement such as Eisenhower in 1957, enforcing school integration in Little Rock, and LBJ federalizing Alabama National Guard in 1965, in Selma to protect black protesters. There were other deployments in Mississippi and Alabama during the civil rights era. So what is the point? The point is that immigration law is the law of the land. Democrats don't get to pick and choose which laws they want to enforce and which ones they want to ignore based on their political preferences, because let's face it, Americans are being put at risk by Soros prosecutors and criminal aliens And these unlawful residents in the United States, these foreigners, are often criminals, and they are posing a threat to Americans. So ICE has every right to protect American citizens. It doesn't matter if the Democrats want more representation in Congress because of the U.S. Census, wrongfully counting foreigners, and it doesn't matter if they want to give them amnesty so that they vote in the future, because let's face it, this is a gambit that the Democrats are running because they know they are angering American citizens, lawful voters, with their anti-American policies, with the way that they're absolutely risking the lives of Americans, and just ignoring the law of the land. So things are coming to a head. We have a kind of cold civil war brewing. We have blue states, and we have governors and mayors there just rebelling against the Trump administration. And they're being radicalized, the Democratic Party, because you look at it, all the enthusiasm is on the loony left-wing fringe, the 20% of Americans who are completely detached from reality and want to see armed or simply just very violent, in some cases, resistance to who is misleadingly and deceptively and diabolically being called a fascist. Donald Trump is not a fascist. ICE are not fascists. There's nothing fascist about enforcing laws of the land that are on the books that both Republicans and Democrats voted for and have been enforced by both Republican and Democrat presidents. So if Donald Trump's a fascist, then so is Bill Clinton. So is President Obama. So is President Biden. Deportations happen. You can go look at the charts yourselves. People have been expelled. And there's nothing unusual about this. What is unusual is the radical left-wing Democratic Party and their increasingly unacceptable reaction to Trump's lawful presidential authority. He was lawfully elected, and he has authority under the U.S. Constitution, and you do not get a blank check to ignore the laws of the land like sanctuary cities do, and also to aid and abet rebellion. And there's some concern that in Portland, for example, the police are working with Antifa, which the Trump administration has labeled a domestic terror organization. So things are getting a little dicey in some of these blue cities. Hopefully we will have common sense prevail. Weigh in with your thoughts about it. We always appreciate hearing from you at Explain America.